Hey, what's up, travelers? Welcome into this little video of mine, of ours. Thanks for tuning in. And today, well, actually this morning, or almost tonight, the sun is waking up. The sun is in Virgo in a few minutes, or maybe it's already there because I've been trying to set up my little recording thing for a while. Yeah. So today I couldn't sleep. I had many thoughts, so I started reading my notes and I was inspired to make a video. I was like, hey, I'm talking to myself, so I could, I might as well just talk to you guys. Yeah, I can sleep when I drink too much tea, but I just like tea too much. If you guys are still there and alive when my physical form isn't anymore, just pour some tea instead of some alcohol, and my spirit will gladly take the vessel for a few seconds. I like green tea. Okay, so let me just read you guys some of my notes here, and this is really what kind of like inspired this fucking video, because I set up my recording thing. I was like, what the fuck was I gonna talk about? It's like I'm thinking in bed, like, oh, I get all these marvelous ideas, but then as soon as like I'm done setting up my stuff, it's like, the chi, the energy flow just switched up, and I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? So okay, so let me just read you guys this quote. Well, it's not really, well, it is a quote now that I make it a quote. I believe this was taken in the Picatrix. Now, for those of you who don't know what the Picatrix is, it's a big grimoire, which is nowadays separated into 4 books, I believe, and it was written maybe 800, 900, like almost like a millennium ago, by some. Well, actually, the sources aren't really certain. We're not really certain about the sources. It is said to be written by some Arabic men around the 11th century, I believe. But some people said he was Greek. Some people said that his name is actually Picatrix. But anyway, so this is like this grimoire of medieval and Renaissance fucking planetary magics. Anyway, so this is what is first said in there. It's not really said first, but sorry for rambling like that. I've been drinking tea and not being able to sleep. So okay, quote unquote, spirit is first, and nothing in the world is older than it. For it cannot be doubted that what is first and oldest in the world ought to have a perfect form. But the perfect form and figure is the circle, because it is the first of all figures and is made from a single line. Now, I was just like thinking about like the actual circle and the sphere, and it is true that just in our language and the way that we actually phrase things, we're talking about a sphere of experience. You're not in a cube of experience. Why? Because a cube is it's limited, A sphere is doing all it can to take up the most amount of volume with the least amount of surface. That's a sphere. So when you're dealing with a sphere of experience, it's like the sphere is trying to reach for the most. If the sphere was cutting itself from certain experiences, it wouldn't necessarily be a sphere anymore. It doesn't mean that cutting a certain piece out of the sphere is bad. Like, he could trace some really perfect geometry just inside a sphere. And mind you, like they're really talking about just a circle, but I'm bringing it to at least a 3D perspective as far as what we're speaking right now. So, and something else also that I found interesting, when we're talking about, and this is like, I don't know, maybe I heard this somewhere, but I feel like this is my own idea. If we are talking about archangels, they could be archangels. The angels are said to delimit, the perimeter of our sphere of experience. They're said to be the ones that are able to go and talk to God, quote unquote, and relay messages between it and us. So if we're looking at a sphere of experience, the archangels are what delimit the sphere of experience. If you go outside of it, you go into the beyond, something that really, just by trying to describe it, you're experiencing what you're describing it, so you can't describe it, right? This is kind of like how I see God also. It's like, you can't really, if you were, okay, so maybe this is mixed up with like Jewish mysticism or something like that. But I feel like you can't really give a name to God, because if you were able to utter God's name, you would just create the universe all for yourself. Because if God is the totality of what exists, and we can only really truly perceive kind of like almost a fragment at a time, like the wholeness of it all is through the experience, right? Well, if you were able to say God's name, you would just englobe all of the experience and describe it with just one expression, then you would be God yourself. So we can only give titles to God, the most, so it's my way of seeing it. So it is sphere. And then when you're looking at like the science of astrology, right, everything is brought back down to a sphere. If you think about it, and I'm just saying random stuff right now, but it's linked somehow. If you think about it, it's really hard to we can estimate what will happen in our sphere of experience, but our calculations are always slightly wrong. But you can never if you're reading the future, it might very well happen as you're reading it, but it will happen in a way that you weren't really expecting that way to unfold before you. So that's the same thing as our calculation of how to get to calculate, the circumference of a circle or the radius of a sphere. When you use the approximation pi, 3.1416, I think, and then it goes into, it isn't quite precise. Just like how we would try to explain what delimits our experience, you can estimate it and be pretty precise, like I could tell you like why, from my experience, something happens, but in the end there's still this lack of precision, so even the circle is too complex for us to fully be able to play around with. It's only estimation. So it's just like the sphere of experience. You can't fully draw it out, and you can't be precise and fully understand what it is to its full extent. You have to estimate. The sphere is really interesting. And then the sphere, when you're in the womb, when you're like in your mother's womb, you're kind of like in this sphere. And then from her egg, which is a sphere, is birthed many molecules, which are spheres that divide and multiply themselves. So it's a bunch of spheres. And then when these spheres become big, and when a lot of small spheres get big enough, then they create a bigger sphere from another dimension or perspective, And then you're looking at like the little sphere and the molecule thingy, and then you look at the stars and it's the same pattern, and they all go in a circular motion. So the sphere truly is important. I mean, it's just like my 6 a.m. rambling after drinking tea. Like, the sphere is really important. Then it's also why, people who talk about like the flat earth, it's like it couldn't work from a third dimensional perspective as far as a flat earth, because everything, everything is a sphere. Why would you think that the earth is actually just a flat surface? Everything has to be a sphere and go into a spherical motion for it to actually be fluid in its movement. If it wasn't fluid in its movement, when you would go up to another dimension of existence, the body of it wouldn't exist. It would be too gross. But since everything is always rotating, it's like there is this illusion, so that when you go into a higher dimension, you might, you know, our solar system here might be seen as like a bunch of rocks flying around one another, but maybe from a higher dimension, just the whole of the universe with all the flying rocks, they're just like energies, like atoms or something that are circling one another, you know. So they have to be circling like that, because through the circling there's a motion that's created, and this motion can be perceived on like many levels. But if it was encircling in like a circular motion, like if it was angular and being pulled here and there, I don't think like we would actually see form. Like it would be too chaotic. Like the sphere is that which brings things together. Yeah, so that's what it was. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in, tuning out.